What if submitting an expense didn't mean endless back and forth emails, lost receipts, and managers forgetting to approve? In this tutorial, we'll create a complete end-to-end expense workflow in mondaycom that handles requests, manager review, finance approval, and payment, all while giving you a powerful insights on a live dashboard. I'm going to break this video down into 5 sections so you can follow along step by step. First is map your workflow. Second is create the structure with the form and board. Third is setting up your phases and automations. Fourth is testing your workflows. And lastly, building the dashboard. By the end, you'll have a system that collects expense details, routes them to the right people, and gives you real-time reporting. Let's jump into the first section, mapping the workflow. Before jumping into Monday, I always recommend starting with a flowchart. Here's what our process looks like. We begin with an expense form submission. It moves to the new expense stage. Then it flows into the manager review. From there, it either goes into finance review or it's marked not approved. Finance can then mark it as approved, and finally the item moves to paid once the reimbursement is complete. Each phase includes automations to notify the right stakeholders and timestamp the activity so that there's always visibility. Mapping it out first helps us spot gaps. For example, do we have a way to confirm submission with the requester? Who gets notified when finance approves? This prep ensures our build is smooth once we're inside of Monday. Now, let's jump into the second section, building the form and board structure from scratch. First, we'll create a board called expense reimbursement. I like to start with a clean slate, so I'll remove the default columns and then design the structure with only what we need. On the form side, here are the required fields: employee name, date of expense, expense type with options like travel, office, or supplies. Then we'll add amount, description field, and a file upload for receipts. We'll also add a hidden requester column that autofills from whoever submits the form. That way, we can personalize automations later. On the board itself, we'll create the groups to reflect our workflow stages: new expense, manager review, finance review, approved, paid, and not approved. Next, let's add our key columns: a status column to track workflow phases, people columns for requester, manager, and finance, a number column for the amount, and a date column for each milestone. We have a clean board that's structured to handle submissions from our expense form. Let's go to the third section, setting up phases and automation. This is where the magic happens, automations. Let's walk through the key recipes starting with new expense. When an item is created, notify the requester. The message says, "Hi requester, your expense submission for expense type has been received. Please allow 3 to 5 business days for processing." Let's go to the second recipe now. When an item is created, assign the manager and finance person automatically. You can do this with an item default or with an assigned automation. Next, for manager review, when the status changes to manager review, move the item to the manager review group, set the manager review date to today, and notify the manager. The notification reads, "Requester has submitted a new expense request for the amount. Please review at your earliest convenience." For finance review, when status changes to finance, notify finance, set the finance date to today, and move the item. The message might say something like, new expense request from requester for the amount. Please review for approval or rejection. For the approval recipes, when the status changes to approve, notify the requester. The message could say something like, hi requester, your expense for expense type for the amount has been approved and expected to be paid on this date. And finally, for the paid automations, when the status changes to paid, date stamp paid today, this set of automations ensure that every stakeholder is looped in at the right time, and no one has to chase updates manually. Section 4, testing the workflow. Now, let's run through a test submission to see everything in action. We'll open the form and submit a new request. Name like Bronson Charles, requester is Lydia, expense date is September 1st to the 14th, the expense type is travel, the amount is $500, and the description is travel to HQ. Lastly, we'll upload the receipt file. Once submitted, it appears in the new expense group with all the details populated. The requester immediately gets their confirmation notification. Next, we change the status to manager review. We'll move the item from group, the manager review date is stamped, and the manager gets a notification. Then finance steps in. Changing to finance review stamps the date and alerts finance. They confirm the details, mark the expected pay date, and approve. Once the status is set to approve, the requester is notified that the reimbursement is on the way. And finally, when finance switches to paid, the pay date is stamped and the cycle is complete. That's our full loop tested end to end. Let's jump into the last section, building the dashboard. Dashboards bring all the data to life. Here are the handful of widgets we'll add. Number of requests by month, which is a bar chart showing how many expenses were submitted each month. We'll also add a total expense amount by month. Same chart, but tracking dollars instead of the count. We can also add an expense type distribution, which is a pie chart breaking down categories like travel, supplies, and office. We can also add a status overview, which is a chart showing how many requests are in the new, manager review, finance review, approved, paid, or not approved group. We can also add an average days from request to approval, a formula widget calculating turnaround time, average days from request to payment, another formula widget showing end-to-end reimbursement time. Together, these widgets give finance and leadership a live view of expense volume, cost, and processing speed. And that's it. You can now have a complete expense reimbursement workflow inside of monday.com. We built the form, designed the board, set up automations for every step, tested the process end to end, and finished with a live dashboard that provides insights instantly. If you'd like us to scope out your workflow needs and design a tailored solution, use the link below to book a free discovery call. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more monday.com tutorials and workflow tips.